After discussing the states Black Americans are leaving, we figured it was only right if we talked about where Black Americans are moving in a recent trend called the New Great Migration, which is a phenomenon where Black Americans are choosing to move to certain states in pursuit of new opportunities, a better quality of life, and in some cases, as a response to discrimination, to name a few. So today on Across the Globe, we're going to be looking at the states that Black Americans are moving to. Number 10, Kentucky. Between 2015 and 2020, 17,540 more Black Americans moved to Kentucky than those who left the state. Interestingly, this is a brand new trend for Kentucky, which, when looking back at the decades from 1965 to present day, hadn't made the top 10 in any of those previous years. While this trend is still so new that there's not a ton of data on why Black Americans are moving to Kentucky, it's likely that the factors driving this are similar to those of the New Great Migration as a whole, which especially include the desire for an affordable cost of living. And Kentucky is definitely more on the affordable side, at least when compared to other states in the U.S. According to the Missouri Economic Research and Information Center, Kentucky is the 20th most affordable state in the nation, with a cost of living index of 93.2 compared to the U.S. average of 100. While groceries cost about the same as the U.S. average, housing, utilities, transportation, and healthcare are all significantly less. Looking at housing in particular, since that's such a hot topic as of late, the median home sale price in Kentucky was only slightly less than $250,000 as of October 2023, which is way less than the U.S. median home sale of a little over $410,000. Number 9, Washington. No, I'm not talking about Washington, D.C. here, even though this city has historically had a large percentage of Black residents. I'm talking about Washington State, which is currently 65.1% white and only 4.6% Black. Despite this, though, Washington has seen a significant uptick in the number of Black residents moving there. Between 2015 and 2020, the state saw a positive net migration of 21,180, meaning that over 20,000 more Black Americans were moving to the state than leaving it. Looking back at the past few decades, this has only happened one other time, between 1975 and 1980, when Washington saw a positive net migration of over 10,000 Black Americans. One potential root cause of this shift is that Washington has a number of military bases, as research has shown a correlation between areas in the Northwest with substantial Black populations and their proximity to military installations. In Washington specifically, these include North Fort Lewis, Whidbey Island Naval Air Station, McChord Air Force Base, and Bangor Naval Base. Number 8, Pennsylvania. Demographically, Pennsylvania's approximately 12.97 million residents are 74.5% white and 12.2% Black. If we do the math, that means that Pennsylvania has a little over 1.5 million Black residents. However, this number is on the rise, as the state recently saw a positive net migration of 28,325 Black Americans. What's interesting is that until recently, Pennsylvania actually saw a consistent decline in its Black population. Between 1975 and 1980, the state saw a negative net migration of almost 26,000 Black Americans. Between 1985 and 1990, that number was about negative 11,000. It jumped to negative 18,000 between 1995 and 2000, and then came down slightly to negative 17,260 between 2010 and 2015. The point is that the influx of Black Americans here is not only a new trend, but it's also a reversal of previous trends the state has seen. The reasons are complex, but some of them may be due to Black Pennsylvanians seeing an improvement in their quality of life. A recent report, for instance, found that there was a significant increase in the number of Black Pennsylvania residents earning $100,000 or more a year, along with a 14% decrease in the poverty rate amongst Black residents. That's not to say that there aren't any problems here, of course, but there does seem to be progress being made. Number 7, Arizona. Number 7 on our list is Arizona, which saw a positive net migration of 32,970 Black Americans between 2015 and 2020. This trend has been consistent, with the state seeing a positive net migration of Black residents for the years between 1985 and 1990, 2005 and 2010, and 2010 and 2015. A big portion of those heading to Arizona are moving to Phoenix, with about 10% of Black Americans making up all of those moving to this area between 2010 and 2020. While more data is needed, initial evidence suggests that the 3 main reasons for Black Americans moving to Arizona are employment opportunities, better weather, and an affordable cost of living, especially when compared to places many Black Americans are leaving, like New York State and California, which are some of the most expensive states in the U.S. Looking at the cost of living specifically, while Arizona is not the cheapest state in the country, it's far more affordable than the states that Black Americans are leaving. For instance, Arizona's cost of living index is 110 compared to New York's 126.5 and California's 136.4. Number 6. Maryland. Between 2015 and 2020, 33,945 more Black Americans moved to Maryland than left it. Unlike some of the other states on this list, which have only recently seen an increase in the number of Black Americans moving there, Maryland has seen a consistent growth in its Black population, with a positive net migration every half-decade, beginning in 1965, with the exception of 2010 through 2015. This makes it pretty clear that Maryland is a desirable place for Black Americans to move to. But why is this? Interestingly, Maryland has had a long history of being a good place for Black Americans to live. All the way back in 2006, for instance, Ebony magazine called Prince George's County in Maryland the wealthiest majority Black county in the entire country. And in the following years, Black Americans also began moving to nearby Charles County. A lot of this has to do with the fact that neighboring Washington, D.C. has long attracted Black residents, and many areas in Maryland are basically suburbs of D.C. The proximity to D.C., combined with the availability of employment opportunities and the appeal of suburban living, has therefore made these areas attractive to many Black residents. Number 5. Florida. If you've watched any of our other videos, you'll probably know by now that Florida has increasingly become a popular place for Americans to move to. This is shown with 36,140 more Black residents moving to Florida than leaving it between 2015 and 2020. This might be surprising given some things we've seen recently, like the NAACP issuing a travel advisory for Black Americans looking to travel to the state, or the state enacting new voting restrictions that many have said have made it harder for Black Americans to organize and vote. Whether these hold any weight is up to each person to decide, though. Either way, Black Americans do appear to be moving here. In fact, in total, Florida has gained 1.3 million Black Americans since 1995, which, given the state's total population of about 21.78 million, is pretty significant. That's contributed to Florida's Black residents representing about 17.5% of the state's total population. Number 4. Nevada. Number 4 is Nevada, which saw a positive net migration of 37,475 Black residents recently. Again, this isn't a new trend, as Black residents have been drawn to the area for almost a century. In fact, historically, Nevada has been a popular place for Black Americans due to economic opportunities influenced by the Transcontinental Railroad and later World War II industries like magnesium plants. While the reasons why Black Americans are still moving to Nevada haven't been researched in depth, likely reasons based on what we've seen elsewhere with the new Great Migration include a lower cost of living. For instance, Nevada has a cost of living index of 101.1, only slightly above the U.S. average, and significantly lower than some of the top states that Black Americans are leaving, like California and New York. Number 3. North Carolina. Between 2015 and 2020, 56,575 Black Americans moved to North Carolina. This trend has been long in the making, with North Carolina seeing a positive 220,000 net migration of Black people between the years of 1975 and 2015. According to Bloomberg, North Carolina has a track record of being a good place for Black Americans to live, especially when it comes to the state's largest cities, Charlotte and Raleigh. Forbes, for instance, named these two places among the top cities in the country where Black Americans are doing well economically. As of 2018, for instance, the homeownership rate for Black people in Raleigh was higher than a lot of cities in the U.S. at 41.3%, and for Charlotte, 41.6%. For comparison, Milwaukee has one of the lowest rates of Black homeownership in the country at just 28.69%. Additionally, both of these cities are considered great places for Black entrepreneurs, with one publication even dubbing Raleigh the startup capital of the South. As if all that weren't enough of a draw, North Carolina's largest cities have low violent crime rates, and the state as a whole has a violent crime rate that's lower than almost half of the U.S. states. Finally, North Carolina is affordable, with a cost of living index of 96.2 and a housing index of only 92.3. Number 2. Georgia. Georgia has seen the second highest level of positive net migration of Black Americans in the country, with 97,385 more Black people moving to the state than moving away between 2015 and 2020. Like we saw with North Carolina, this trend has been a long time in the making, with the state seeing a positive net migration of Black Americans starting all the way back in 1975. In fact, the Black population has doubled in Georgia since 1990, increasing from 1.7 million to 3 million people as of the latest census count. A huge part of this has to do with the lower cost of living, especially given that a lot of people are moving here from more expensive states like New York and California. To put this into perspective, the cost of living index in New York is 126.5, and in Georgia, it's 90.9. Housing in particular is cheaper, with the median sale price of a home in Georgia being about $367,000, compared to New York being over $762,000, which is more than double. Aside from the lower cost of living in Georgia, two other key reasons for this influx of Black Americans in Georgia include job opportunities and what's being described as a type of cultural cohesion here, considering the influence Black Americans have had on the area historically. Number 1. Texas. Number 1 on our list is Texas, which saw a positive net migration of 107,505 Black Americans between 2015 and 2020. For some context, Texas has a total population of 30 million people, about 77.4% of which is white and 13.4% Black. What that means is that Texas actually has the largest number of Black Americans out of any other state in the country. And this number is growing, with the Texas Tribune reporting that those of color are making up 95% of Texas's population growth. Presumably, Texas's affordable cost of living has something to do with this. For one, Texas is only one of 9 states in the country that has no state income tax. Its cost of living index is also lower than more than half of the states in the country, with an overall index of 93, and groceries, housing, transportation, and healthcare are all between about 4% and 16% less than the national average. Looking at housing specifically, the median home sale for a Texas home as of October 2023 was about $342,800, which is over $71,000 less than the national median home sale. What about the worst cities for Black Americans?